I discovered 10 terrifying tales from real morgues, where corpses held unbelievable secrets. I never should have opened that door. It creaked like it hadn't been moved in decades, sending a chill down my spine. My heart raced as I stepped into the dimly lit room, the stale air wrapping around me like a heavy shroud. The faint smell of formaldehyde lingered in the atmosphere, mingling with something rotten. I was just there to satisfy my curiosity, but now, as shadows danced along the walls, I wondered if I had made a horrible mistake. Every morgue has its stories, its whispers of the past. I had heard of the one where a corpse seemingly sat up during an autopsy. My skin prickled as I imagined the horror on the coroner's face when he realized the body before him wasn't as lifeless as he'd hoped. It couldn't be real, could it? But then again, I remembered the tale of the body that had begun to emit an eerie sound at midnight, like soft sobs echoing through the cold steel of the drawers. I nearly gasped, the thought lodged in my throat, the darkness around me thickened. Shadows flitted, teasing the edges of the light, and my skin prickled with fear. I strained my ears, listening as soft thump echoed somewhere in the back. My heart quickened. Was it the building settling, or something much worse? I tried to shake it off, but the memories of the mysterious fingerprints found on a cold glass case, different from the initial body in question, made my stomach churn. Who or what had left them? My hands trembled. I recalled the chilling tale of the laughing corpse, a legend about a body that laughed uncontrollably during an autopsy. What kind of madness is that? I swallowed hard, a lump forming in my throat. I took a step deeper into the dark room, curiosity battling with fear. I just had to know more. A faint rustle caught my attention, a noise that didn't belong. My breath hitched. The stories played in my mind. The one where the body rolled off the gurney during a power outage came to mind. I fought the urge to turn around and run. Instead, I pressed on, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. The chill seeped into my bones, making every step feel like a plunge into icy water. Suddenly, a sharp noise, a crash resonated through the room. Panic surged within me. I stood frozen, barely daring to breathe. It sounded like something heavy had fallen. My mind raced. Was it the body? Had something awoken? Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Darkness loomed, curling around a figure that lingered just beyond my sight. I squinted, trying to make out the shape. Was I imagining it? My pulse quickened, my palms felt slick with sweat. I felt the familiar sensation of being watched as the air grew thicker. I could hardly think of anything other than escaping the suffocating atmosphere, and then the door slammed shut behind me. A scream caught in my throat. I spun around, but it was too late. The darkness swallowed me whole as the figure stepped closer, its intentions as murky as the shadows closing in. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness pressed against me like a suffocating weight, every breath I took laden with dread. As I turned back toward the room, my fingers grazed something cold and metallic, the heavy gurney. I steadied myself, my heart thundering in my chest, straining to hear any hint of the figure that had lurked at the edge of my vision. Hello. My voice sounded fragile in the oppressive silence. The word felt like a plea, but the void offered no response. Only the dank scent of decay wrapped around me, thick and nauseating. I took a hesitant step forward, my instincts screaming for me to flee, yet my curiosity anchored me in place. The door felt like a phantom barrier, blocking my path to safety. I needed to understand what was happening. Then I heard it again, the soft thump from deep within the morgue, rhythmic and deliberate. It was as though something trapped within was trying to free itself. My breath caught in my throat as images of the laughing corpse danced through my mind, grotesque scenarios playing out in vivid detail. I gritted my teeth and advanced toward the sound, each step heavy with anticipation and fear. As I rounded a corner, the stark fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows that writhed against the walls like ghosts. I spotted a door at the far end of the room, slightly ajar. It beckoned me, like a mouth half open in a silent scream. The thumping grew louder, pulsing in my ears, and with it came a low, indistinguishable whisper, like a conversation too distant to understand yet too intimate to ignore. Was it the dead discussing secrets of the living? Or perhaps the living speaking with the dead? My skin prickled at the thought. I tiptoed closer, each footfall a fearful prayer for invisibility. Just as I reached the entryway, the door creaked open wider, revealing an inky blackness beyond. The thumping morphed into something more urgent, a desperate plea, a heartbeat in a void. Summoning courage, I grasped the doorknob and pushed it open. The air inside chilled me to the bone, and I entered the small room, its contents hidden beneath rusted sheets. A shiver of malevolence washed over me as I uncovered a part of the floor, discolored and cracked, revealing a small hatch. The thumping echoed louder still. It came from beneath the floor, rhythmic, as though something had been waiting all this time, anticipating my arrival. Suddenly, the soft sobbing started again, rich in anguish and sorrow, slicing through the stillness with a soul-wrenching clarity. My heart raced. I edged closer to the hatch, half tempted to pull it open and confront whatever laid beneath. But in that moment, a chilling thought seized me: what if it wasn't a body down there? What if it was something far worse? Before I could decide, the sobbing intensified, twisting into a sharp wail that reverberated through the walls. I recoiled, my pulse quickening with primal fear, and at that moment, the darkness seemed to congeal, swirling thickly around my ankles, pulling me down. I could feel the presence again, pressing closer, watching, waiting. I heard whispers again, clearer this time, as if they were drawing me into a forgotten memory, a painful truth just beyond my grasp. Then, with an unholy crash, the hatch burst open, an unseen force yanking upwards with such ferocity that I stumbled back, colliding with the gurney. Something began to emerge from the abyss below, and I caught a glimpse of a face pale, distorted, eyes wide with a hunger that could only spawn from the depths of despair. That I was not alone anymore. A nameless horror rose up, and in its wake, darkness poured forth, trembling with rage and despair. As my mind raced with the impulse to flee, a whisper broke through the cacophony, chilling me to my core: "You shouldn't have opened that door." The world seemed to tilt, the shadows closing in around me, and just as I thought I would drown in that abyss, I felt something brush against my arm, something cold, clammy, and undeniably alive. All went dark. The stillness swallowed me whole, darkness draping over my senses like a shroud. I couldn't tell where I ended and the darkness began. Minutes felt like hours, and every second an eternal damnation. My heart hastened, pounding fiercely against my ribs, a desperate drum echoing in the silent abyss. Had I succumbed to the blackness, or was the world still out there, waiting for me to emerge from this polluted void? As my eye began to adjust, a flicker of light sparked at the edges of my vision, not the fluorescent glare of the lights above, but something raw and primal. It pulsed and flickered like a waning flame, casting grotesque silhouettes against the walls. I strained to see what had stirred in the shadows. It wasn't just any light, something glimmered within it, a shard that betrayed the transparency of the dark. Was it hope or something sinister? Fighting the instinct to retreat, I edged towards the light, and each step felt suspended in a layer of uncertainty, my breath hitching as dread cloaked me again. The cold slide of panic gripped my throat when I noticed that the whispers had returned, reverberating through the air with a haunting melody, spinning and weaving like apparitions in my mind. "You shouldn't have opened that door," echoed through my thoughts, a haunting refrain laced with malevolence. But instead of retreating, I pressed forward, compelled against my will. The light drew nearer, illuminating a scene that tarnished the edges of sanity. Before me, sprawled across the floor, was the form of what one might assume was a body, but the grotesqueness of it made me question everything. Features stretched in unnatural ways, skin glimmering like the oil on a raven's feather, slick and shimmering within that false light. The eyes, however, held the most horror, pupils dilated, almost as if the soul within was caught in an eternal scream, and that scream was echoed in the voice that approached me, wretched and warped. "Help me!" A gasp tore from my lips, my feet frozen in place. I could see now that it wasn't merely dead, it was alive in a way that shouldn't be possible, a sickening blend of life and decay. It reached out with brittle fingers, a desperate plea laced with torment, intermingled with the impending essence of death. "Please, I can't stay here," the voice trembled, resonating deep within my bones. Turning to run, I stumbled back, but it was too late. The very ground I stood upon shifted, as if the morgue itself were awakening, its nascent horrors writhing and curling in defiance. Shadows writhed around me, stretching toward the gurney, taking shape, and in an instant, the space felt less like a room and more like a coffin being sealed for eternity. That I stumbled backward, colliding with the wall, my breath caught in my throat, desperately trying to make sense of the twisted tableau unraveling before me. Bizarre figures, grotesque imitations of humanity, began emerging from the shadows, their forms contorting around the gurney, faces lost in agony yet imbued with a sorrow too deep to comprehend them. My eyes widened as I recognized one among them, a face familiar yet eternally changed. It was someone I thought I'd lost forever, Samantha. I barely recognized her, her smile had been replaced with the hollow visage of despair. Her mouth moved as if to speak, but the words morphed into anguished wailing, tossing around us like an angry tide. No. Don't listen. She seemed to scream, a fervor igniting in her voice but drowned in the storm of despair that surrounded us. My heart thundered as I grappled to decipher the reality unraveling in waves before me. Could she still be alive? This place had twisted her beyond recognition. The shadows drew closer, and a cacophony of voices erupted, hissing and screeching, words coiling like vines around my sanity, each one laced with the dread of a secret too terrible to bear. Suddenly, Samantha's eyes locked onto mine, burning with a desperate urgency. "You have to go before they take you too." But before I could process her words, the floor buckled beneath me, and the figures lunged forward. In a frenzied rush. The shadows howled, a tempest of malevolence closing in. As I realized this was no ordinary moment of madness, it was a prelude to something far worse. In that terrifying instant, the original darkness of the morgue wrapped its tendrils around me, pulling me into an insatiable void. As I fought against the engulfing shadows, I felt a hand ice-cold and clammy grip my ankle, anchored to the floor, and dragging me inexorably downward. "Don't leave me!" Samantha cried as her form twisted in agony, melding with the damnation that surrounded us. That I screamed, a raw, rending cry that echoed off the walls, but as I slipped into the infinite dark, I felt her presence dragging deeper into the unknown abyss, the last shreds of my sanity unraveling. No escape remained, only the whispers promising all my fears. And then nothing, the chaos faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. I lay in the dark, breathless and unable to comprehend what had just transpired, but then I heard it, the soft thump started again, resonating beneath me, as if urging me to uncover what lay sealed beneath yet again. And I was not alone. The weight of that silence, initially comforting, twisted into a dreadful shroud that clung to my skin. My heart raced, the echo of Samantha's cries still rippling through my mind. I strained against the inky blackness, yearning for any semblance of light or life. But the silence pressed down, and when I focused, I could hear it thumping, relentless and insistent, promising revelations I dared not desire. With a tremble, I flipped onto my stomach, palms scraping against the cold, hard surface beneath. It felt like the ground pulsed, a heartbeat emanating from deep below. I bent my ear close, and the sounds morphed into a rhythm, like a drum echoing from the bowels of the earth, beckoning shadows to dance around me and whisper secrets only the dead could know. Just then, I noticed the chill seep deeper into my bones. It wasn't just the air that turned frigid, it felt as if fingers of ice twisted around my spine. I scrambled to my feet, my breath shallow and ragged as I scanned the dark, not daring to call out, knowing that whatever lurked there thrived on fear. The shadows writhed, their shapes shifting and swirling, dashing through the edges of my peripheral vision. Then, I made out a distant glimmer, a dim pulsating light breaking through the blackness once more. Tentatively, I shifted toward it, the thumping continuing to resonate beneath my feet, intensifying with each step I took. I could almost hear the whispers again, urging me forward. Awaken, awaken. Reaching the source of the light, I saw it was a crack, ancient wood splintered apart, revealing a hidden space. Peering through, my breath caught in my throat. It was a hidden chamber, and within it lay an altar, crafted of bone and stone, dripping with dark fluid that shimmered under the glow. Stretched across the surface were unsettling remnants that suggested a history laden with dark rituals. I recoiled as the images bombarded my mind. Sacrifices, lost souls, conjoined fates overlapping in agony. Flashes of recollection surged past, memories of stories told in hushed tones of haunted places, blood-soaked offerings, spirits enshrined in eternal torment. I recoiled from the crack, but my body remained rooted in place, curiosity and dread coiling together like serpents in my chest. The thumping beneath me changed tempo, intensifying, pulling me toward an intersection of fate I could not escape. In a sudden rush, the chamber door burst open, casting a sliver of light across my face. I turned to flee, but the shadows harbored whispers of temptation under their breath, lulling me into complacency. I stumbled backward, but the light and the figures swirled together into one terrifying masa fusion of twisted faces, skeletal hands reaching out, their forms shimmering like smoke yet revealing the intricate horror that lay just below the veil. And then, I felt its solid grip that clamped around my wrist with the strength of death itself. I gasped, eyes darting to hold the gaze of a glitching aberration before me. It was a figure resembling Samantha, but her visage danced between life and decay, and in a heartbeat, I could see the moment she realized she was both my savior and my doom. Help me. She screamed, but the words wound through my mind like a siren's song, pulling me back into the embrace of those who had succumbed before. I felt sick, my vision blurring. Why was she trapped here? Had they risen from their graves to claim another soul? Or had I become the pawn in a game much larger than myself? Don't look away, she called, her voice fraying at the edges with urgency. You have to make the choice or it will consume you. Panic flickered through me, raw and consuming, propelling me to break free from her grasp. But the ground groaned beneath me, demands rising from the depth of the altar, a forbidden pact waiting to be sealed. The air thickened, oppressive and alive with a malicious energy, whispering promises laced with misery. I felt it wrap around my lungs, constricting, urging me to do the very thing I feared the most. Rattling, I turned back toward the shadowy door, but thick tendrils emerged from the long voided space, intertwining my limbs, pulling me closer to that altar of horrors. I fought against them, but my feet slipped, just outside the grasp of freedom, into an impending void that yawned wide, eager to welcome me in its embrace. Then came a sound, sharp and eerie, the crack of bone breaking and reforming behind me. I turned just in time to see a figure pull free from the walls, an entity woven of the same shadows that lingered like a curse in the darkness. It stood tall, too tall, and I felt its eyes boring into the core of my being, unlocking every tormenting fear. Welcome, it rasped, each syllable clinging to the air like fog, to the sanctum of the drowned. Choose wisely, for something must be sacrificed. And with that, the weight of a decision loomed before me, darker than the abyss that surrounded. In that moment, I understood there would be no escape without a price. I teetered on the precipice of doom, and all the voices merged into one horrific chorus, beckoning me to join their ranks. Would I choose to join them in their torment, or fight against the darkness in a desperate bid for survival? The altar's cold stone loomed closer, ready to claim its next victim, and I knew, in the marrow of my bones, one way or another, I would have to make the unimaginable choice. The darkness deepened, a living void suffocating every spark of hope. There I stood, heart hammering, the shadows bending closer, curling around me like a noose. Something ancient stirred in the depths, an echo of despair, circling through tendrils of gloom. I could hear it still, that relentless thumping, more insistent than ever, rising from the depths of the altar, a heartbeat that could swallow my own if I faltered. Choose, the entity crooned, its rasp echoing in my mind as if weaving the sound into the very fabric of my thoughts. You are not merely a visitor here. You are part of this, molded by its grief. You know this place. It claims what it desires. A jolt of memory flickered within me, like a candle struggling against a storm. The faded stories my grandmother told me as a child, cautions wrapped in the guise of folk tales. Whispers of those who made pacts with forces beyond comprehension, exchanging their sanity for power, for knowledge buried in the recesses of the earth. I swallowed hard. That knowledge came at a price, Samantha, I cried out, a desperation tainting the air. Where are you? What do I have to do? For a heartbeat, a flicker of hope danced across her ashen face, those eyes pleading, still teetering between existence and oblivion. But the shadows pulled tighter, their weight heavy and insistent. My mind spiraled into torment, caught in a paradox of choices. What would I become if I surrendered? Would I become part of this macabre cycle? Would I join the others as they roamed, lost souls roaming in the night, forever calling for redemption? The air hummed with an almost tangibility, a hum that resonated in my very bones. Gauzy wisps of shadow coiled around the altar, breathing life into the bones and decay. I could see figures twisting into Shapi dance of despair, entrapped in an unending waltz, their hollow eyes locked onto me. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, giving birth to more terrors. From the cracks in the walls, phantasmal images flickered, faces I recognized, friends, strangers, all screaming in silent anguish, their mouths agape in horrific cries that I could not hear, their eyes filled with despair. They were trapped in that void, eternally bound to the altar, waiting for someone to join them. Join me, the entity whispered, its cold breath sending shockwaves through my spine. Feel their pain, it will set you free. Yet in that moment, I felt a flicker of defiance spark within me. No. I would not surrender my will. I lived. I could still fight back. I jerked my hand free from Samantha's grasp, disgusted at the thought of joining those who had made their sacrifices. I knew I could not allow the darkness to claim me. With every ounce of strength, I lunged toward the door that led back to the shadows, but the floor heaved violently, the pulsing beneath my feet escalating to a frantic rhythm. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, snagging my legs and dragging me closer towards the altar's chilling embrace. I felt cold fingers clutching my throat as screams clawed their way from my lips, but no sound escaped. My throat shriveled in terror, the shadows relishing my fear, echoing my anguish in a symphony of despair. Make your sacrifice. They chorused, a cacophony of distorted voices drowning my thoughts. What will you give? The suffocating weight of despair pressed in all around me. Up ahead, blurry visions of Samantha and the souls entwined with her spun around, the shadows beneath them growing thicker, more palpable. A realization washed over me. If they were in limbo, perhaps their freedom hinged on the very choice I fought to ignore. Would my refusal to succumb mean their eternal imprisonment? Terror clawed at my throat, but I held on to my resolve. What choice could possibly end this cycle? I could not abandon them, nor could I let myself be consumed by the very darkness that sought to envelop me. Your fate lies with me, dearly lost, the entity hissed, drawing closer, its ghastly form casting no shadow. Its eyes, void as the night, pierced through to my very essence, reveling in the chaos. What you hold dear is the price. Before I could gather my thoughts, Samantha's form began to fade before me, slipping back into the abyss, the shadows devouring her screams for help. No. I screamed, extending my arm toward her, but it was still not enough. A wave of anguish surged forward, tugging at my heart, tying me to the altar. No. I will not trade my soul. Then perhaps you'll gift something else, it hissed, the shadows darkening, wrapping around me like the arms of a long-lost lover. An echo, a memory, something that will nourish the void. With those words, the ground trembled beneath me, and a blinding flash erupted in the murky air. Everything twisted, the veil of darkness shredded apart, revealing a vast expanse of swirling memories, the laughter of my childhood, the warmth of loved ones, the marrow-deep regret of paths untaken and words left unsaid, and in that moment, I felt the ground beneath me give way, and I spiraled into the void, a painful rift pulling me into an unknown fate, suspended between the life I lived and the shadows clamoring for my surrender, wailing in forgotten tongues. All that echoed in my head were the demands of the altar and the whispers of the shadows, me sacrifice or their eternal woe. The choice I feared crystallized before me, and as the abyss yawned wider, ready to consume all, I could only scream. And hope someone, somewhere would hear me before it was too late. The free fall seemed endless, spiraling through layers of darkness that echoed with memories I had long forgotten. Each fragment of the past brushed against me like icy fingers, instilling fear with reminders of what once was birthdays, laughter, moments of love and loss, all tainted by the shadows that now sought my very essence. As I plummeted deeper, an unsettling quiet descended, a guttural silence that swallowed the scattered echoes of my memories. I clawed at the nothingness, but it held only an iron grip of despair. I had no control, no direction. The weight of the void around me pressed in, molding every thought into an inescapable dread. Suddenly, the sensation of falling ceased. I landed with a jarring thud on a surface that seemed alive, undulating and pulsating beneath me. I opened my eyes to find myself encased in a dimly lit hall lined with towering, grotesque figures, dark silhouettes that towered over me, ominous shadows twisted into unnatural shapes. Their blank, featureless faces stared down at me, as if judging the worth of my soul. I staggered to my feet, heart racing, searching for an escape. The ground beneath me groaned, every step echoing around the hall, reverberating through the shadows like a proclamation of my existence. I could still hear the echoes of those I left behind, each wail, each sigh intermingled with my own trepidation. "You are bound here now," a voice whispered, serpentine and sinister, slithering its way into my mind. "You may have escaped the altar, but nothing escapes the grasp of those who dwell in the dark." My instinct screamed for me to run, so I did. I sprinted through the hall as the figures shifted, their malleable forms beginning to stretch, arching toward me. Dark tendrils reached out, curling around my ankles like the grip of the grave, pulling with a force that made my heart race. The walls around me shifted grotesquely, morphing with every frantic motion. Faces of the lost emerged, eyes wide with horror, drawn into the fabric of the dark. I stumbled, trying to shake off the sensations of those who had been lost before me. The shadows clung tighter, dragging me closer to the maw of the abyss. I bolted into a smaller chamber, breaths short and ragged, as a sudden luminance pierced the dark, illuminating twisted murals that adorned the walls. Each depiction was a tale of torment, a spiraling descent into madness. I shielded my eyes from the radiance, yet it beckoned me closer, urging me to confront the horrors it contained. Among them, I discerned a representation of my own face, twisted in anguish, trapped in an eternal scream. Terror surged through me, a potent mix of recognition and despair. "No. I can't, this isn't happening." I cried out, despair flooding my veins. Yet, the radiant light pulsed in rhythm, echoing a heartbeat, a morbid echo that resonated with the pounding in my chest, larger than any singular breath I took. In that moment, the figures in the hall swarmed around the chamber, pooling together as shadows began to thrum, enacting a ritual that echoed through the layers of time. As they danced, their forms shifted, entwining with the vibrant depictions on the walls, merging the past with the present. My chest tightened, and I understood that I was here not just to observe but to participate. A thread woven into a tapestry of chaos. "You will be offered a chance," the voice whispered once more, its cadence ethereal and sinister. "Walk among them, learn their stories, embrace their anguish, and perhaps you will find peace among the broken." Confusion raged within me, but even as I wrestled with my thoughts, the magnetic pull of the figures became undeniable. Memories surged forth, intertwining threads of guilt and grief. But within that chaos, I sensed others, forgotten souls lurking in the dark corners of my mind, aching for liberation. "Help us," they begged, their voices now a whisper of the wind. "Help us break the chains you've forged." I hesitated, crumbling under the weight of their sorrow. Could I risk my remaining sanity to save the lost? The pulsating shadows encroached, thickening around me, their hunger insatiable. "Choose," the entity commanded, emerging as a silhouette cloaked in darkness, its eyes glinting with the promise of power wrapped in the guise of despair. "Your desperation will either shatter the darkness or merge with it." The world dimmed around me, and as I pondered my next move, the radiant chamber began to flicker, fading into an overwhelming blackness. I felt the ground sway beneath my feet as shadows morphed, ominous figures gathered at the threshold, and all I could do was stand frozen, caught between the survival of my own soul and the chance to save those trapped within the dark. "What will it be?" the shadow whispered again, hot breath chilling my skin. And with that, the walls of reality began to collapse, a sinister rift forming before me, producers of otherworldly wails erupting from its depths, beckoning me to step forth. I had only moments left to decide before it swallowed everything I knew whole. Once again, I was teetering at the edge, the weight of my decision looming ominously as the abyss lurked, ready to embrace me fully. What lay beyond that rift? And how much of myself would I have left when I emerged? My heart thundered in my chest as the shadows beckoned, "Join us," and just before the ground crumbled beneath, I realized, with horror gripping my throat, that I was not facing just the destruction of my own fate. I was about to awaken something unspeakable that had long yearned for rebirth, and I was the key. The rift pulsed, a blackened maw inviting me into a realm where time and space twisted like a coiling serpent, every fiber of my being screaming that this was not merely a passage, but a full-throated plunge into madness. I felt its cold breath on my skin, snaking around my ankles, rooting me in this hellish tableau. My hands trembled, and every instinct urged me to flee, but the whispers of the deceased surged like a torrent, wrapping around me like a cocoon woven from despair. "Join us," they breathed once more, their voices amalgamating into a haunting symphony that resonated with the very marrow of my bones. "Save us!" Desperation clawed at my heart, the sultry whispers luring me into dark promises. I had glimpsed their anguish, their faces a portrait of forgotten sorrow, but the choice to abandon my own humanity in pursuit of their salvation terrified me. Yet, the flickering light from the mural beckoned, illuminating the path to understanding their world while threatening to extinguish my own. The shadows wove intricate forms, crawling forth in a ghastly dance. Each figure carried a tale of gory demise, of unfinished lives echoing through the void. They lurched towards the rift, expecting my compliance, an offering of flesh and spirit ready to prostrate before their needs. And at that moment, I caught a glimpse of something else, a flicker of movement behind the shadows, a deeper shade following their movements, a darkness that was aware of my spirit's hesitation. Suddenly, a wail pierced the air, sharp enough to rattle my bones. From within the rift, a figure emerged, static and contorted. It was cloaked in dark veils that shifted and pulsed with a life of their own, revealing claw-like hands that dripped with an inky substance. It moved with a horrifying grace, its featureless face impossibly wide, stretching into a ghastly grin that sent my heart plummeting into icy depths. "Foolish one," it said, the voice guttural and raw, vibrating through the very fabric of space. "Did you think you could decide the fate of others without paying your due? There is always a price." The air thickened with dread as I fought the intense urge to retreat, feeling the abyss clawing at my ankles, hungry and relentless. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, my voice barely rising above the cacophony of the tormented shrieks swirling around me. "Your pain is our nourishment," the entity growled, eyes gleaming like shards of glass. "Embrace it. Share it. Then you may walk among them and discover the horrors hidden beneath the surface of the world. You will unravel secrets that not even the dead can comprehend." As it spoke, the silhouettes began to ripple, accelerating towards me in a frenzy of agony, each one yearning for release from their entrapment. The murals throbbed to life around me, their vibrant colors now bled into one another, while the tales of torment whispered through the air like venomous serpents. I could almost hear their stories unfolding, cries of betrayal, the tinged memories of breathless terror, and the death throes of those who had suffered before the darkness engulfed them. Memories I had long buried surged forth unbidden, a torrent of faces I had tried to forget. The chill of loss wrapped around me like a shroud, until a shattered voice pierced through the deluge, crystallizing the weight of my emotions. "Don't choose the shadows, find the light." It was a voice I recognized, rising from the depths of my consciousness, a loved one, long departed, their spirit clinging to the fraying edges of my sanity. "You can save her, she deserves to be freed." I staggered back, the connection striking with a force that sent shockwaves through my chest. Those I had lost were coiling around me, their faces caught in eternal moments of dread, willing me to realize the path to salvation was not merging with the darkness but bereaving it, shattering the cycle of despair. "Choose wisely," the entity warned, its voice an ominous growl. "Each decision is a thread, weaving your fate with theirs. Beater of hearts, ruler of shadows, consider the cost and the weight of your choice." The ground trembled beneath me. I felt the pull of both shadows and light, the terror of binding my fate to the lost souls clamoring for release, and the hope stirred by the faint memories of love and warmth. The figures rushed towards me, their hands outstretched, claws ready to rip into the fragile fabric of my spirit, when I noticed something emerging from the rift, a glimpse into the void, tendrils of despair curling around inconceivable horrors that lingered just beyond sight, and in that moment, amidst the riot of swirling shadows, I glimpsed the unthinkably a gaping maw, lined with familiar faces twisted by anguish, crawling with life yet devoid of hope. They were the very vessels of anguish that would consume me and leave nothing but an empty shell behind. With my heart hammering, I realized with chilling clarity, whatever choice I made now could either shatter the darkness or bind me irrevocably to it, as the ground shook wildly beneath me. The rift expanded, drawing closer, closer, revealing a vortex of all the lost souls begging for redemption and a monstrous terror seeking to be awakened. "You cannot toy with fate," I heard the entity intone, voice rich with sinister delight. "Embrace the shadows or be devoured." Just as the shadows lunged, hands eager to pull me under, an ear-splitting roar erupted from the rift, sending tendrils of fear snaking through my veins, locking me in place as the chamber plunged into an even darker chaos. The howling figures melded into one blinding sphere, and I stood frozen at the precipice of horror, my vision swirling with the horrifying realization all choice had vanished, leaving me to confront the terrifying truth that my next breath might be my last. The walls of perception splintered, the maelstrom surging forward, and as the rift roared to life, I caught one last flicker of familiar eyes pleading in the shadows, whispering a name that rang like shattered echoes in my mind. In that moment of dread, I was faced with the impossible dilemma, to succumb to the shadows or to cling desperately to the light, knowing my choice would define not just my fate, but all who lingered in the dark. And amidst the chaos, just as I prepared to choose, the darkness erupted forward, engulfing me in a surge of hatred and despair, whispering promises of horror as I was dragged into the abyss. The weight of the abyss wrapped around me like an iron cloak, dragging me deeper into its unrelenting darkness. I felt tendrils of shadow curl around my wrists, ceaselessly tugging, trying to bind me to despair. The air hissed and snarled, suffocating my cries, blurring the line between reality and the swirling nightmares that clamored for attention. I plummeted through a cold, viscous veil, and as I finally broke through the surface, I found myself standing on an impossibly slick surface, the ground shifting beneath me like a living thing. A grotesque tableau unfolded all around, silhouettes coiled and writhed, their elongated shadows splayed across walls that seemed to pulse with angry, vivid colors. The mural, alive in its torment, depicted a cycle of agony, and every face looked hauntingly familiar, some twisted in expressions of despair I'd witnessed in dreams and others from memories that haunted my waking hours. "You're one of us now," a whisper echoed, seductive yet horrific. My heart raced in time with the distorted throbbing of the walls. I turned to see the source, a figure I once loved, eyes wide and devoid of life, stretching toward me from a corner cloaked in shadows. There is no escape. Only acceptance, that I recoiled, overwhelmed by fear. "No. This isn't right," I yelled, desperate to shatter the illusion. "I won't join you." But something inside me trembled, stung by the truth buried within the specter's gaze. A part of me began to wonder if acceptance was the only path left, if fighting was futile against the darkness looming behind every corner. From the depths of the shadows, I heard the entity's voice coiling around me like a serpent. "It is within you, this darkness. You cannot fight it because it is." Suddenly, the whispers turned into a shriek that reverberated through the cavern, an anguished wail that filled the space with a clamoring of dissonance. The walls reacted to the sound, trembling like the fabric of reality itself, and an inky mist crawled forth, swirling at my feet. The periphery of the room transformed, and in the chaos, I caught a ghastly glimpse of other realms, each one more monstrous than the last. "They wait for you," the entity roared above the din, its long limbs gesturing toward the unseen horrors in the mist. "Visitors from beyond, longing for hosts. You could be their vessel, a harbinger of truths unknown, but you must grasp the darkness," it continued, its tone dripping with malicious allure. The rift beside me began to rumble, and I could hear voices emerging from the depths. They echoed stories of those lost to the shadows, their pleas clawing at my resolve. I stepped back but stumbled onto something soft, warm, and pulse-like, almost like a living embodiment of dread trying to drag me down. My heart raced as I turned, my breath caught in my throat at what lay in front of me. A grotesque creature emerged, its body an amalgamation of human and shadow, dripping with the sorrow of countless souls. Its eyes, if one could call them that, glimmered like dying stars, filled with infinite pain. "Help us," it beseeched, its voice a mournful harmony that resonated within the very core of my being. "Save us from this abyss, be our salvation." The clash of feelings, care and repulsion boiled deep within me. Behind it, more figures emerged, an endless mass of writhing bodies, each face contorted in anguish and despair. Their fingers reached out, brushing against my skin with icy coldness, embedding my flesh with unknown horrors. I thrashed, trying to escape their grasp, but the more I fought, the tighter their grip became, their pleas embedding into my mind like foreign seeds rooting themselves. "You must decide," the entity urged with unholy glee. "Embrace them, and they will guide you. Resist, and you shall never know what lies beneath the surface." Against the backdrop of cries and mournful whispers, I scanned for a flicker of hope, a beacon that could pierce through the dread that coiled me. I glimpsed something out of the corner of my eye, a shimmering light, not just any ordinary glow, but a fierce brightness promising safety and solace. It pulsed with warmth, drawing me in a contradiction to the chilling shadows surrounding me. But at that moment, the creature lunged forward, mouths opening, revealing gaping maws lined with jagged teeth, hungry for not just blood but essence, the very soul of my being amidst the chaos. Fear gripped my chest as I realized I had no time to ponder. Time was slipping through my fingers like sand, and their whispers grew louder, a cacophony of desperation echoing within the shadowy chamber. I could not let the darkness consume me, had to choose at that critical moment. As the shadows converged, jaws snapping with vicious hunger, I took a breath of defiance. "I won't let you win," I shouted, my voice echoing against the tumultuous walls. Just as I felt the weight of all the tormented souls crush upon me, the rift bulged, spewing forth a turbulent wave of power. Darkness and light entwined in a deadly dance as fate twisted once again. The ground beneath me gave way, and screams merged into a monstrous roar, drowning out everything, including my own chaotic thoughts, and then all went silent. That and the eerie stillness that followed, a beating heart pulsated through the void, resonating with something ancient, something alive, and it was my heartbeat that matched it. It was then that realization hit with the force of a tidal wave. I had become a vessel, caught between the light and dark, suspending the cycle of torment, but at what cost? And before I could grasp the depth of my fate, I felt eyes staring back at me from within the shadows, eyes that promised not just horror but a sinister knowledge of my very soul. "Welcome, Harbinger," they cooed softly, threading an eerie calmness through the chaos as shadows coiled around me snugly. "Your journey has only just begun." In that harrowing moment, I stood at the brink of the unknown, my horror-laden choice reverberating into twisting darkness, fully aware that this was merely the penultimate descent into madness. The question clawed at my mind: had I truly chosen, or had I simply awakened the beast? The heartbeat thudded louder, a metronome tick-tocking away the moments of lost clarity. I stood rooted, caught in a liminal space, the shadows closing in like a predator encircling its prey. The eyes in the darkness multiplied, a multitude of staring orbs glistening with dreadful anticipation, each pair imbued with stolen lives and whispered secrets. A deep, resonating voice shattered the silence, reverberating through my bones. "You've chosen to awaken the packed-up bond beyond the mortal coil. You must face the darkness that lurks more than just outside." The ethereal cadence heralded something dreadful, promising a deeper plunge into madness. An oppressive weight filled the air, thickening the silence until it pressed down like a vice. Suddenly, the ground pulsed beneath my feet, and reality blurred again, rippling like water disturbed by unseen forces. I was pulled into a disorienting cascade, colors bleeding together until they formed nightmarish shapes. I could barely comprehend what was real anymore. A cavern opened below me, a spiral staircase twisting downward into the black maw of an unseen void. The heartbeat amplified, harmonizing with my pulse. It was a disturbing lullaby coaxing a hidden truth to the surface. Instinctively, I reached for the staircase, my hands gripping the cold stone, slick with condensation that dripped like moist breath. Each step echoed with ghastly whispers, the voices of the lost pinching at the edges of my mind. They begged and pleaded, their fragmented stories melding into a cacophony of terror that unfolded the tragic tales of the living. Memories, both mine and not, erupted in quick flashes, scenes anchored in the fabric of wretchedness, people upholstered in despair, faces contorted in a grotesque synergy of fear and sorrow. A young girl clung to her mother's lifeless body, blood pooling around the man, echo of abandonment. A man, eyes wide with disbelief, sank beneath the waves, struggling for a release that never came. With each footfall, I felt the shadows absorbing these memories, merging the past into the fabric of my being. I was no longer just an observer, I was becoming part of their stories, the pain intertwining with my own, saturating my soul with their anguish. My breath heaved, suffocating on the weight of their sorrows as the voices grew louder and more insistent. Help us. They pleaded, their words nascent with desperation. Don't let us fade into oblivion. We need a vessel, find us, release us. Then, a chilling realization washed over me. I wasn't merely descending, I was being summoned. With each layer that peeled back, I could feel their collective fears clasping my spirit, warping my thoughts into something malevolent. The ghastly orchestra of sorrow coiling around me became hypnotic, drawing me deeper into an abyss that at last, I emerged into a vast chamber illuminated by a singular flickering light, suspended precariously above an altar of bones. With looming shadows dancing across walls dressed in tattered drapery that pulsed with life, the air thickened with an unmistakable unease. The light emanated from a large, ornate mirror, its edges crusted with dried blood, crackling softly as if vibrating with unseen energy. The reflection it cast was not my own, instead, it was them, faces twisted in anguish, eyes full of torment flickering like dying embers. Power radiated from the mirror, a malevolence that begged to be unleashed, throbbing in rhythm with the heartbeat that still resonated within me. I felt the pull, an inexplicable urge to delve into the mirror's darkness, to touch the cold surface and shatter the barrier between worlds irrevocably. Awaken them, awaken us, they urged softly, their voices melding. Let us be free. With trembling fingers, I reached towards the mirror. The shadows converged, blurring the edges of reality until it bore no distinct separation. An ethereal stillness enveloped me, and within that silence, I sensed the future burgeoning, a chaotic potential that hummed beneath the surface. But then, as I touched the mirror, it shattered into a whirlwind of glass and shadows, slicing into the fabric of the abyss I had unwittingly embraced. Out from the shards, faces swirled violently, wails escaping their lips like forgotten prayers. They surged forward, and I felt myself tearing apart at the seams, me consciousness ransacked by their desperate desires. With terror knotting in my stomach, the shadows coalesced into a grotesque form, a monstrous amalgamation of corpses morphing into one reunion of anguish. And amidst it all, the abyss gaped open wider than before, its depths threatening to swallow whatever shred of me remained whole. You belong to us now, it roared, a cacophony of voices suffusing my own every breath I took, weaving the dark tapestry they had shared. Become what you were destined to be, a harbinger of the lost, the vessel of our darkest truths. As they lunged toward me, desperation gripped me. The mirror's reflection twisted into something grotesque, revealing a flickering, phantom-like image of a gargantuan maw, ready to devour my essence whole. And just as I thought I would be conquered by the very shadows that summoned me, the ground beneath me cracked open, a roiling whirlpool of darkness becoming an escape route, a glimpse of freedom or an even deeper descent. Just as the claustrophobic darkness threatened to engulf me, the flickering light emanated from the shards glowed fiercely, illuminating everything in a startling brightness, pulling me in that last moment. Light clashing against shadows, chaos erupted, and in its wake, a sound like thunder pealed through the depths of the abyss, a voice booming above the roar of despair. You cannot escape your fate, for the darkness has already claimed you. And as the abyss reached for me, my screams drowned in the chaos, I realized with bone-chilling clarity I was not merely lost, I had become what they feared the most. The reckoning was upon me, and damnation lay just around the corner. I woke in the morgue, the familiar smell of decay swirling through my senses, flooding my mind with dread. A jarring reality swallowed me whole. I was alive. Yet, the pallor of death still clung to me, spectral fingers trailing across my skin like a warning. Panic clawed at my throat as fragmented memories cascaded into chaos. Samantha's cries, the binding shadows, the mirror shattered, yet it all felt impossibly distant. The silence in the room was unnerving, punctuated only by the relentless ticking of a clock that seemed to echo my racing heart. I sat up on the cold gurney, disoriented, and focused on my surroundings. To my horror, everything looked familiar: the rusting gurneys, the stark fluorescent lights casting eerie glows overhead, the frigid air thick with something unspeakable, but something was drastically different. A chilling realization bloomed in my gut: I wasn't alone. Mirrors lined the walls, each reflecting snippets of the grotesque tableau that lay within my mind, each haunted visage locked away in those frames, trapped in eternal screams parading before my eyes. Then I saw it, the twisting mass of darkness pulling at the corners of my thoughts, beckoning me to step closer and join them in their torment. That I shuddered as the memories crystallized: Samantha warning me, urging escape, her voice becoming the ache of something irrevocably broken. Had I returned to face what I had unwittingly become? A shiver coursed through me, and I realized that this was no mere morgue. It felt like the heart of darkness itself, a veritable sanctum of despair that coveted souls. That I stumbled to my feet, my heart pounding in my chest, stepping toward the door I had once opened so innocently. But it stood barred, unyielding against my frantic hands. Desperation scratched at my mind like the clamor of the wretched souls behind Methy hadn't been released. They lingered, seeking their truth, their vengeance. A voice emerged from the shadowy depths of the room, echoing like an unsettling chant, each syllable igniting my fear. You have awakened us. You cannot escape the pact. We are eternally bound. Frantically, I turned back, hope dwindling with each haunting panicked breath, surveying the mirrors that now glimmered with the horrors of those I'd encountered. They were not just reflections, they were sentinels of my choices. And amidst their beckoning cries lay the remnant of Samantha, staring back with those haunting eyes that now bore the weight of the grave. Help us. Free us. She cried, a haunting resonance that sent shivers racing through my spines. But know this: each time you seek to escape, the price grows heavier. Every word twisted the knife deeper, carving out fragments of my soul as the shadows swelled, licking at my heels, closing in from every angle. I collapsed to my knees, grappling with the torment that danced around me, their desires mingling with my own fears, suffocating me with regret and longing. How had I summoned them back? There in the depths of my despair, I realized when I had plunged into that mirror, I had not simply shattered something. I had released a horror that craved a vessel, but why hadn't I felt them before? The weight of their presence surged through me as realization clawed at the edges of my sanity. In refusing to succumb in that abyss, I had instead become a part of it all, destined to roam these halls. A vessel for the very shadows I sought to shun. No, I whispered, trembling beneath the weight of this cruel truth. I wanted to scream, to shout for freedom. I tried again to break the door's steadfast grip. But it remained unyielding. The whispers grew louder around me, a crucible of despair and rage. You are lost, as we are lost. They chanted, voices rising to a fever pitch. You cannot run from what you are. The shadows crept closer, fingers tracing my skin, and I backed against the cold wall, reluctance morphing into sheer panic. Get away from me! I screamed, but it only incited their hunger. They crawled, tracing back old stories long forgotten. In a stunning moment of clarity mixed with horror, I understood. I was bound not with chains, but with shared agony, the pain of all those I sought to rescue entwined with my own cursed fate. The truth slithered through me, entwined like smoke, whispering secrets of the binding pact I had unwittingly embraced. Their memories seeped into me like poison, and I felt my sense of self slipping. Join us. Samantha screamed again. No. I want. I roared in rage and agony as memories swirled, his anguished face twisted in death, her eyes wide with betrayal, the ties that bound me growing heavier, clawing at my heart. I could no longer discern where I ended and they began. Suddenly, another searing plea ruptured through the chaos, a different voice, familiar and heart-wrenching. Help me, you promised. It cried, weaving through the shadows, me voice, yet not mine. A manifestation of the facets of my guilt resonating against the fractured mirror of my soul. With that, the truth hit me like a gut-wrenching blow. In choosing not just to live, but to bear their burdens to entwine our fates, I had awakened the darkness that would forever anchor me to this cursed place. No. I screamed, a fleeting flicker of defiance hijacking my despair. But the shadows coiled tighter, and I felt myself losing control. The weight of my choices anchored me down, fusing my fate with every tortured soul bound to this depraved sanctuary. I was no longer merely an observer. I was a participant in this eternal damnation. And as the echoes of every fresh scream reverberated around me, I understood, I had become the next tale of horror to be told, another chilling whisper in the vast darkness I had allowed to descend. As the last vestiges of my defiance crumbled, I was enveloped in shadow, every ounce of my being resonating with the truth of what my life had morphed into. And then, the finality settled into my bones. The true horror had merely just begun, a future, a reflection of the very abyss I had opened. That was the last thought that echoed through my mind as I was drawn into the weightless dark somewhere, far in the recesses of all that was lost. A twisted chorus of whispers promised, "Welcome to your fate." Time lost all meaning as a wretched laughter filled the air, the resounding echo of despair reverberating endlessly through the abandoned Hulsa celebration of the darkness that claimed another soul and the horror that endured beyond the veil of death.